In today's video, I'm going to compare the iPhone 16 Pro Max against the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So if you are excited, drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel, let's compare both iPhones. The iPhone 16 Pro Max came out this year and it's currently the newest iPhone available, while the iPhone 14 Pro Max came out 2 years ago. Can you imagine? It has been 2 years since the iPhone 14 Pro Max came out. But both of these devices are still very similar to each other. Yes, although the iPhone 16 Pro Max is 2 years older than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it's only 2 generations ahead. So what are the biggest differences between these two phones? Well, mainly USB-C, titanium frames, and the ultra-wide lens. The rest is very similar in these phones. So let's first talk about the design. The design of these two phones, it's extremely similar. If you held these devices in your hand right now, you won't notice that big of a difference. The only thing that you would notice is the sharper edges and the harder stainless steel than the titanium that you have here. So the titanium feels smoother and it feels lighter, while stainless steel feels heavier and sharper because of the sharper edges. Yes, the iPhone 14 Pro Max was the last iPhone to feature the iPhone 12's design, while the iPhone 16 Pro Max features the iPhone 15's design. So curved edges, but flat sides. It's more comfortable in the hand and it makes the weight distribution better. Of course, all of this together with the differences between titanium and stainless steel, which makes this iPhone more durable, less fingerprinty, less dirty, at least looking, and way better feeling in the hand in my opinion, makes the iPhone 16 Pro Max a more refined version of the design of the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So, which design do I prefer? Well, at the end of the day, I think it's subjective. There are still lots of people that love the stainless steel design of the iPhone 14s, and they still love these sharper edges. They give you more comfortable hold on your iPhone. They give you a more premium feeling, but I think they are more uncomfortable after long periods of time. So, the difference in design between the iPhone 16 Pro Max and the iPhone 14 Pro Max are almost the same as the iPhone 16 Pro Max and the iPhone 13 Pro Max. One thing that the iPhone 14 Pro Max does have is a beautiful matte color. This matte black color is insane. Although I also love the new matte color on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. The 15 though was too light in my opinion. So yes, in terms of design, they are very similar. They still have the triple camera system design. They still have the dynamic island. Firstly introduced on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, they do have the overall same bezel size. The 16 Pro Max has a bit less bezels, but who cares? They still have the frosted back glass design. Everything pretty much is the same, but the iPhone 16 Pro Max has two big advantages. One is the action button, so you have a customizable button for your shortcuts. Like I've told you 1,000 times in these comparison videos, I use it for ChatGPT. Incredible to have AI so close to your hand, on the tip of your finger actually. And the second thing is the camera button, the camera control, whatever you want to call it. It's super cool. You can launch the camera with one click. You can zoom in, zoom out, change the settings menu, change your camera settings with just scrolling with your finger. Light tap, 2 light taps, whatever. You need to learn it, but it's very useful. Although it's no more than a gimmick. It's a useful gimmick. So I wouldn't say it's a deal breaker. You should buy the iPhone 16 Pro Max or upgrade for the iPhone 16 Pro Max just for that. But I would say it's a nice thing to have. So yes, those are two big hardware differences between the iPhone 16 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max. But other than that, other than USB-C, which I will talk about just in a bit, I don't think that's that big. Yeah, I need to touch on the elephant in the room, USB-C. That's probably the biggest difference and the biggest deal breaker about having the iPhone 14 Pro Max in 2024, and the thing that I would imply you to upgrade for the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Yes, I think that USB-C is that big thing that will push you forward to upgrade for the 16 Pro Max. USB-C, the port that destroyed them all. USB-C now is the universal port. You have it on your laptop, on your computer, on your PC, on your camera, on your iPad, and yeah, it's everywhere. Now on AirPods, so should you upgrade just for USB-C? This is a tough question to answer because USB-C is so universal and for me such a big deal that I would upgrade just for that. But I see lots of people still using lightning cables, still having lots of iPhone accessories that use lightning. So currently, lightning, it's still too early in the process of replacement to be called obsolete. And so having lightning currently in 2024, October of 2024 more precisely, is not a deal breaker. But I do believe in 1 year or two, it will. And yes, the iPhone 16 Pro Max has much faster transferring speeds with USB-C. It has USB 3.0 speeds, I think, which are much faster. It can transfer all the ProRes footage that this iPhone captures very fast, while the Lightning port here is still at USB-C 2.0, so much slower. The charging speeds are also affected. The iPhone 16 Pro Max charges much faster, either by MagSafe or by wireless charging. And with that, the iPhone 16 Pro Max has way better battery life. The iPhone 16 Pro Max came out as one of the battery champs from Apple, while the iPhone 14 Pro Max was very disappointing. This was the first time that Apple made the cellular size of the battery thinner and smaller. So the battery life taken a hit in 2022. So if you compare these two iPhones when they were new, the iPhone 16 Pro Max would have about 20 to 25% better battery life than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. That's true. The 16 Pro Max can last you easily 2 days. For me, it's about 5 to 6 hours of screen on time, while the iPhone 16 Pro Max lasted me around 4. So it's actually a big difference. It's a 20% difference between these two devices. Also, the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and that's something that I want you, iPhone 14 Pro Max user, to tell me in the comments down below, it had issues with battery health stability. At least these iPhones, after 1-2 years, they were shot in terms of battery, while the newer iPhones, the 15 Pro Max, it lasted me like 1 year, only losing 1%. This is still at 100%, while this 14 Pro Max, I think it's at 83 or 82 after 2 years. Kind of suspect. But at the end of the day, if you replace both batteries, they will last you the whole day, pretty easily. As for the displays of these two phones, the iPhone 16 Pro Max has a bigger display. It has a 6.9-inch OLED display with 120Hz that is also capable of 2000 nits of peak brightness, while the iPhone 14 Pro Max has a 6.7, so a bit smaller display. It's an OLED display and it has 120Hz also. It still has Dynamic Island, the same as the iPhone 16 Pro Max, but it's not as bright, so it only has 1600 nits of peak brightness. At the end of the day, do you notice the difference? You do, but it's only like in very bright conditions outside or at night. Very dark conditions, because the iPhone 16 Pro Max can also dim the display much further. So this iPhone has a bigger range between the brightness of the display in terms of its maximum value and its minimum value. So if you are looking for a more versatile display, the 16 Pro Max, it's surely it. It's brighter and less bright at the same time. While the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it's a very balanced display. The colors pop, they are very contrasty. If you compare the same video in these two phones, you won't notice the big difference. You won't notice the difference that will tell you need to upgrade. No, it's actually very similar, almost the same, I would say. But if you put it on extreme conditions, like very bright sun days, you will notice the difference. Or if you take it to extreme conditions in terms of low light, then you will also notice that the iPhone 16 Pro Max is more comfortable to your eyes because it can dim the display more. So in terms of displays, very similar. I would say the peak brightness, it's the biggest difference, but both have 120Hz, both are OLED displays. Oh, one thing, the 16 Pro Max is obviously bigger, 6.9 against 6.7. If you wanted the bigger iPhone, this is your choice. It has smaller bezels, but it's also a bit bigger in the body. If you put these phones side by side, you will probably think that the iPhone 16 Pro Max is about 1/3 of a centimeter bigger than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. That's pushing it. But having a 2-inch or 0.2-inch increment on the display, is it that big for you? For me, it isn't. 5G connectivity, all of that, it's pretty much the same. Both of these devices have very stable connections, incredible overheating protection whenever you're using 5G, no issues there. The only issue you will notice is whenever you are playing games using the A18 Pro here and using the A16 here. The A18 Pro here performs much better. It has ray tracing, but is also more efficient. So whenever you are playing games, the display does not need to dim that much, and that's a big one for me, because the 14 Pro Max had lots of issues with dimming, with overheating whenever playing games. It never throttled under very hot loads, never, but it would dim the display. While the 16 Pro Max is much better on that. According to Apple, they've created a new chamber inside of the iPhone to make it less hot and to disperse heat better. So the A18 Pro here, it's more efficient, but it's also more powerful, which enables you to play AAA game titles like Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty, normal Call of Duty, Resident Evil, whatever you want to play. If they are a AAA game title, they are supported on the A18 Pro, which has ray tracing and of course supports Apple Intelligence, while the iPhone 14 Pro Max doesn't. So if AAA game titles and of course AI are important for you, the iPhone 16 Pro Max with the A18 Pro takes the lead in this comparison, especially on AI. I do believe that Apple Intelligence will be the future of iOS in terms of improvements, and if your iPhone does not support that, it's being left behind. So yes, I think that this big difference will be more noticeable in a few months, but right now it's not that big. And finally, the part that everyone is waiting, the camera comparison. Here's the thing, because these two iPhones are like only 2 years apart from each other, they have really good cameras and very similar cameras. They are both triple camera systems. They have both 40 megapixels main sensor and 12 megapixel telephotos, but the iPhone 16 Pro Max has a 40 megapixel ultra-wide, while the 14 Pro Max has only a 12 megapixel ultra-wide. The telephoto camera here is also different. It has a 5x telephoto, while the iPhone 14 Pro Max has only a 3x. So different focal ranges that work in different ways and look different. But I do prefer the focal range of the 120mm 5x lens here. Different, not better than the 3x here. At the end of the day, the sensors are probably almost the same. They are both 40 megapixels, so have tons of detail. They both take incredible raw photos. This has incredible light performance, but also the 14 Pro Max does have incredible light performance. The biggest difference will probably be on the sharpness of the ultra-wide lens. But at that point, I'm just being too picky. So the cameras here, both are incredible. The video is also incredible. The only noticeable difference on the video side is of course 4K 120 frames per second here and only 4K 60 frames per second. Other than that, even the video looks really similar. Oh, almost forgot, if you love shooting on log, so you can edit videos and mix videos with Sony cameras, DJI, Pocket, whatever you want to do, the 16 Pro Max can do it, the 14 can't. So in terms of cameras, they are still very balanced. They are still very close to each other. Again, only 2 years apart. So if you love taking photos, the 16 is a jump, but not a big one. And so that's the panorama of the comparison between these two devices. Battery life, USB-C, titanium, smaller bezels, bigger display, better ultra-wide lens. Are all of these things significant for you? Because if they are, if you think that these features will change your life, upgrade. But if you don't waste your money. Your 14 Pro Max is still good enough to use in 2024. Way better than good enough. There are lots of people that would benefit by buying a 14 Pro Max in 2024. This phone is still amazing. The only deal breaker that I see on it is the Lightning port. Other than that, it's still flagship level device. If you are thinking of upgrading, then keep in mind that you will probably get around $650 for your 14 Pro Max, and you have to put upwards of $500, $550 to get yourself a 16 Pro Max. So think about it. Is the $550 worth it? Currently, I don't think so. So let me know in the comments below if you have an iPhone 14 Pro Max, and of course, do you plan to upgrade in the near future? Let me know all of that. While you're there, drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel. Bye bye.